All right, welcome. Thank you very much. I think the actors knew all along that this would be a somewhat casual affair populated by a non-hostile audience. That was guaranteed. And that they might even outnumber you. But that's okay. I don't know if this is an entirely true characterization, but I think you've mostly been here to learn rather than to rehearse and perform. So that's been our focus through the class. And in a lot of ways, you're just seeing a model class today, an example of a class more than a performance that got a lot of preparation. Right. We have 5 scripts that we've been looking at, and there is kind of a theme running through them, which is that I wanted to carry the class from the Roman era, which is where we left off in the last class that Sandy was a part of, up through the closer to the modern era. In other words, get to the Elizabethans. We don't have any Elizabethans represented here because the plays that we read were so interesting that we only got to Marlowe and Shakespeare, the 2 ultimate Elizabethan examples, over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And actually, that material is so much more well-known and common that I wanted to focus on the less well-known. So we're starting today with the last great author of the classical period that was characterized by Greece and Rome. So some would put what was going on in the Middle East or in Egypt in that classical period as well. But the 2 civilizations that produced dramatic literature and really had plays as we understand them with audience and actors and everything were Greece and Rome. But the comedy is something fresh and new and interesting, but also very silly and superficial. And it's almost always about basic needs. Characters who only want money, or only, a funny servant who only wants food, or most typically, everybody only wants sex. The scene that we're going to read is from a play called The Pot of Gold by Plautus. In it, there's a crazy miser who is obsessed with a pot of gold that he's found, so obsessed that he's completely miserable owning this pot of gold and always thinks everyone is stealing it. And so we have Euclio being played by Ira, and he's our miser. And then a young man he encounters named Lyconides, played by Sandy. Now the funny thing that's happening in this scene, typical like sitcom or Marx Brothers type stuff, is that Euclio thinks he's talking about his pot of gold. Lyconides comes up and confesses, "I did it, sir, I did it." And Euclio assumes he's talking about the only thing he cares about, his pot of gold. In fact, Lyconides is referring to having impregnated Euclio's daughter.
Death, murder, destruction. Which way shall I run or not run? Stop, thief, stop. What thief? What's his name? I've no idea. I'm in a fog. I'm running blind. I haven't any clear idea of where I'm going, who I am, or what my name is. I beg, I pray you, I beseech you, come to my assistance. Tell me where he went, the man who stole it. You, sir, what do you say? I'm sure you can be trusted. You have an honest face. What is it? What's so funny? I know your lot. Crooks, that's what you are, 99% of you. You sit in whitewashed togas and pretend that you're respectable. Doesn't anyone here have it? You don't know? Murder. Then tell me who does. Don't you know anything? Misery, misery, I'm destroyed, wiped out in sackcloth and ashes. This day has brought me such weeping and sorrow, agony, bankruptcy, and starvation. I'm the world's greatest expert on them. What do I have to live for now? I've lost the gold I'd so carefully hidden. I've cheated myself, my hopes, my dreams, and everybody will laugh to see me take it so hard. I can't endure it.
Who's making such a racket and crying at the door? I guess that must be Euclio, and I'm done. The secret's out. He knows his daughter's had a baby. Now the question is, shall I go or face him? Stay or run? I wish I knew.
Who's talking?
I am. More's the pity.
No, I need the pity. I'm in such pitiful plight, such trouble, so unhappy.
Keep your spirits up.
And how do you expect me to do that?
This thing that so upset you, I confess I did it.
What? What did you say?
The truth.
What have I ever done to you, young man, that you should treat me so and ruin me and my children?
It was the devil in me, putting temptation in my way.
Explain yourself.
I see the errors of my ways, and I know I should be censured. And so I've come to ask you to be patient and forgive me.
How dare you lay a finger on someone else's property?
What do you expect? It's done, and nothing can undo it now. I think it must be fated, or it never would have happened.
I think it must be fated that I take you home and flog you.
No, don't say that.
What do you mean by laying hands on my treasure without my permission?
Blame love and wine.
I never heard such impudence. You have a nerve to stand there and say that to my face? If you're allowed to go without your punishment, what's there to stop us snatching purses in broad daylight? If we're arrested, we'll say, sorry, we're drunk. Lay the blame on love. Love, wine, they're trashy things. If the drunkard and the lover can get away with murder.
But I've come freely to ask pardon for my foolishness.
I don't like people who do something wrong and then go around whining that they didn't mean it. You knew you had no right. You should have kept your hands off.
All right, but given that I haven't kept my hands off, I won't beat around the bush. I say that finding's keeping's.
Over my dead body.
No, I don't ask that. I'm only asking for my rights. I think you'll find I have a better claim than anyone, Euclio.
If you don't give it back, I'll march you off to court and sue you.
Give what back?
My stolen property.
I stole your property? Where from? What is it?
Lord bless the boy, as if you didn't know.
How can I unless you tell me what you're looking for?
My pot of gold, that's what I'm asking for. You admitted it already.
I said no such thing. I never touched it.
You deny it?
Certainly. I don't know anything about your gold, or pot for that matter.
The pot you stole from the grove of Sylvanus. Give it back. Come on, hand it over. I'll go shares. I'll give you half. You're a crook, but I won't argue honest. Give it back.
You must be crazy calling me a thief. I thought that you discovered something else I have an interest in. A thing of great importance. I must talk over with you at your leisure, Euclio.
On your honor now, you didn't steal my gold?
No, on my honor.
You don't know who did?
Nor that on my honor.
If you did find out, you'd tell me?
Certainly.
You wouldn't cover up for him and share the proceeds?
No, of course not.
And if you break your promise?
Then may I be dealt with as God above sees fit.
That's fair enough. Now what's on your mind?
You have a daughter.
Okay. And that's, yay, that's our first. Fast forwarding 1600 years, we are in the height, some would say getting towards the end of the medieval period. There's no room for silliness or comedy because it's all about teaching the moral values of the one and only monolithic spiritual dominant force in Europe, which is the Catholic Church. They were the people who knew about plays and the effectiveness of plays in delivering a message, especially when the priests are delivering it every Sunday in Latin and nobody speaks Latin anymore, right? They call them medieval mystery plays or morality plays or allegories. We can create a drama where the characters represent values that the church is trying to teach. And so the first one we're going to see, let's start at the beginning. This is dated around 1400 AD. There were earlier versions of this. This is Genesis. This is the creation and fall of man. It's an anonymous playwright. So we have, as Eve, we have Mary Clare. As Adam, her husband, we have her husband, Harry. And as the serpent, we all know who that is James. All right, so this is from the creation and fall of man, circa 1400. When you're ready, actors.
We may be both blithe and glad, our Lord's commandment to fulfill. With fine fruit be we fair fed, wonder sweet and never one ill. Every tree with fruit is spread. Of them to take as pleases us till our wits were unstable. We would be bad to do aught against our Lord's will in any wise. In this garden I will go, and see all the flowers of fair beauty, and taste the fruits of great plenty, that be in paradise.
Hail, fair wife and comely dame, this fruit to eat I thee counsel. Take the apple and eat the same, this fruit is best, as I thee tell.
That apple to eat I were to blame, from joy our Lord would us expel. We should die, and be put out with shame in joy of paradise, never more to dwell. God himself thus said, what day of that fruit we ate. With these words God did us threat, that we should die, our lives to let. Therefore I am afraid.
Of this apple, if you will bite, even as God is, so shall you be, wise and knowing, as I you plight, like unto God in all degree. Sun and moon and stars bright, fish and fowl on land and sea, as your bidding both day and night, all things shall in your power be. You shall be God's peer. Take this apple in thine hand, bite thereof I thee demand, and take another to thine husband. Therefore thou have no fear.
As wise as God is in his great brain, and a fellow in knowledge, fain would I be.
Eat this apple, and for certain that I am true, soon shalt thou see.
To my husband with heart full glad, this apple I bear, as thou biddest me, this fruit to eat. I shall him persuade, so wise as God is, if we may be, and God's peer of might. To my husband.
And let me ask you, Mary Claire, to move to Eve's line in the middle of the next page of this apple. Do you see that?
Yes.
All right.
Of this apple, if thou wilt bite, God's peer thou shalt be on height. So wise, so cunning, I thee plight, this fruit is thou wilt eat.
If we eat ourselves, we kill, as God has told we should be dead. To eat that fruit and my life to spill, I dare not do as thou hast said.
A fair angel thus did me tell, to eat that apple, take you no dread. No cunning is God on heaven's hill. Thou shalt soon be, and stand in his stead. Therefore this fruit thou eat.
Of God's wisdom for to learn, and in cunning to be his peer, from thy hand I take it here, and shall soon taste this meat. Alas, alas, for this false deed. My friendly, fleshy friend, my foe I find, shameful sin from us proceeds. I see us naked before and behind. Our Lord's word we would not dread. Therefore we now Caleb's unkind. Our poor privets to hide, some fig leaves fain would I find to cover our sin and grief. Woman, lay this leaf on thy privity, and with this leaf I shall hide me. Great shame it is naked to see, our Lord God thus to grieve.
Great. So that's our second play. Weighty matters, heavy stuff. Okay. Yes, that incredible moment, incredibly entertaining moment when somebody suddenly realizes they're totally naked. We're going to look at somebody who followed up on this notion, the entertainment value in the husband-wife relationship, in a play called Noah's Flood. A lot of what we just heard was lifted almost directly from Genesis. The next play we're going to hear takes incredible liberties with the Old Testament. Noah's wife, in this version, refuses to come on board. She's too faithful to her girlfriends, her gossips, as she calls them, who she likes to stand around drinking with and talking to. And it gets to the point where the waters are rising and somebody has to go. The three sons, Japheth, Ham, and Shem, need to forcibly get her on board. This is by Anonymous. This is Noah's Flood, circa 1400 AD. I'm actually going to read the stage directions in this one. James is playing Noah. Sandy will be Noah's wife. Ira has Shem and Ham covered. Harry is playing Japheth. and Mary Claire gets to play one of the gossips. Noah, annoyed that his wife has not come aboard, descends the gangplank and finds her chatting with a number of women in the audience, some of whom are members of the cast who've been mingling with the audience during the preceding action.
Okay. Wife, come in. Why standst thou there? Thou art ever perverse, that dare I swear? Come in on God's behalf. Time it were, for fear lest that we drown.
Yea, sir, set up your sail, and row forth with evil luck. And without any fail, I will not out of this town, unless I have my gossips, every one. 1 foot further I will not gone. They shall not drown by St. John, and I may save their life. They loved me full well by Christ, unless thou wilt have them in thy boat. Else row forth, Noah, whither thou list, and get thee a new wife.
Shem, son, lo, thy mother is angry. Forsooth, such another I do not know.
Father, I shall fetch her in, I trow, without any fail.
He goes down to his mother.
Mother, my father after thee send, and bids thee into yonder ship wend. Look up and see the wind, for we be ready to sail.
Son, go again to him and say, I will not come therein today.
Come in, wife, in 20 devils' ways, or else stand there without.
Shall we all fetch her in?
Yea, sons, in Christ's blessing and mine, and would you die, you betime, for of this flood I am in doubt.
The flood comes in, full, fleeting fast. On every side it spreadeth full far. For fear of drowning I am aghast. Good gossip, let us draw near. And let us drink ere we depart, for oft times we have done so. For a drought thou drinkst a quart, and so will I, ere I go.
And the gossips pass around a jug of alcohol, presumably supplied by Noah's wife. Noah, in despair, returns to the ark.
Mother, we pray you all together, for we are here, our own children. Come into the ship for fear of the weather, for his love you have brought.
That will I not, for all your call, unless I have my gossips all.
In faith, mother, yet you shall, whether you will or not.
And the 3 sons drag their mother onto the ark.
Welcome, wife, into this boat.
She gives Noah a lively blow.
And have thou that for thy speech.
Aha. Mary, this is not. How. It is good to be still.
Okay, good. Yay! That was Noah's flood. This is playwrights discovering the liberties that they can take even with very well-known material. Now we're going to go back in time a little bit. I want to share what might be the most interesting play that we read. It's the first play that we know of ever written by a woman. It was written by a nun named Roswitha, in Saxony, in Germany, basically. And it's named for the title character is a bad guy named Dulcitius. Dulcitius is a general put in charge of 3 imprisoned girls. The 3 girls have refused to, what they've done actually is refused to get married and worship false gods. The section in the middle where he attempts to assault them, interestingly, she does not put on display. Instead, Dulcitius breaks into where he thinks they are, which is a kitchen. He thinks they're in the kitchen. And in his crazed lust, he hugs and kisses on a bunch of sooty pots and pans, while the girls watch from a safe peephole. But that part's pretty funny. And it's amazing that this girl, this nun, came up with this. When? In 1000 AD, 400 years before even the plays we just read. Her greatest influence? Probably the Romans, Plautus and Terence, the comedic playwrights of the Roman era. I am playing the Emperor Diocletian. He'll also reappear as a foolish soldier. Sandy is playing the first martyred virgin, Irena. James, the second, Agape. Mary Claire, the third, Chaonia. Harry is playing our bad guy protagonist title character, Dulcitius. And Mary Claire will also be heard as wife of Dulcitius. We'll find out what she thinks of his doings. Bow your heads to the gods, and in this deference be an example to your sisters, that they may be freed.
Let those who wish to incur the wrath of the Most High bow before idols. As for me, I will not dishonor my head, which has been anointed with kingly oil, by abasing myself at the feet of idols.
The worship of the gods brings no dishonor. On the contrary, it brings the greatest honor.
What baser shame, what greater disgrace, to venerate slaves as if they were princes or lords.
I do not ask you to venerate slaves, but the gods of the leaders and princes.
Is not that which can be purchased cheap in the marketplace a slave?
Enough of this presumptuous talk. Let these girls be taken away and put to the tortures.
That is what we most desire, to bear the cruelest torture for the love of Christ.
Let these stubborn girls who defy our orders be bound with chains, be cast into a prison, and be examined by Governor Dulcitius.
Soldiers, produce the girls whom you hold in prison.
See, these are the ones you asked for.
Wonderful, what beauty, what charm. How extraordinary these girls are.
They are truly beautiful.
I am captivated by the very sight of them.
We are not surprised.
I am thrilled. Do you think they will return my love?
We do not believe you will have any success.
And why not?
Because their faith is steadfast.
No matter. I will persuade them with a little flattery.
They despise flattery.
Then I shall treat them to punishment.
That matters little to them. They will suffer punishment without yielding.
Then what can I do?
That is for you to determine.
Lock them up in the inner workroom near the porch, the one in which the serving pans are kept.
And why in that place?
Because I can visit them easily and often.
It shall be as you command.
What are the prisoners doing at this time of night?
They are singing hymns.
Let us go nearer.
Now we hear their shrill voices in the distance.
Take their lanterns and guard the doors without. I will go inside and enjoy their embraces, which I greatly desire.
Enter, and we will await your return.
What is that clattering noise outside the door?
That wretched Dulcitius has come in.
May God protect us.
So be it.
What is this clashing of pots and kettles and frying pans?
I will look out. Come, I beg you, and peek through this small crack.
What is it?
Look, the foolish fellow must be out of his mind. He thinks he is embracing us.
What is he doing?
Now he hugs the kettle, now the frying pans, and now he hugs the pots, caressing them with soft kisses.
How ridiculous.
His face, his hands, his clothes, they are soiled and dirty. With the soot clinging to them, he looks like an Ethiopian.
That's fine. His body should turn as black as his soul, which is possessed by the devil.
He seems to be going. Let us see what the soldiers who are waiting for him are going to do when he goes outside.
Porters, admit me to the palace. I wish to speak privately with the emperor.
Who is this vile, disreputable creature who comes here in these filthy rags? Let's cuff him and pitch him down the steps. Don't let him come any closer.
Woe is me. What has come over me? Are not my clothes splendid? Am I not neat and clean in my appearance? Yet everyone who meets me shows disgust, just if I were some horrible monster. I shall return to my wife and learn from her what has happened to me. But look, here she comes, her hair disheveled, and her whole household follows her weeping.
Alas, alas, my lord, what has happened to you? Are you out of your mind? You have become a laughingstock to the Christians.
Now at last I know, these Christians have made a fool of me.
What troubles me more than anything and makes me very sad is that you are ignorant of what has happened to you.
I'll order these insolent girls to be dragged forth and stripped of their clothes in public, that they may experience the mockery to which I have been subjected.
I am grieved to hear of the outrageous manner in which Governor Dulcitius has been tricked and insulted. But these mere children will not boast of having freely made a mockery of our gods and of those who worship them. I shall direct Count Sicinius to wreak our vengeance. That's our last European medieval play. But we have a special treat for you if you can hang on. Now, nothing as sophisticated as Greek tragedy happened again in Europe until the last period we studied, the Elizabethan period, also known as the Renaissance. But meanwhile, in the very darkest of dark ages by European standards, amazing things were happening elsewhere in the world, notably Asia. And so we read a play from halfway between the Romans and the medieval stuff that was written in Sanskrit by the Indians. It was part of the Indian sacred tradition. But, of course, the Indian sacred tradition is much less monolithic and much, some would say, crazier, much more eclectic, much wilder. It's a pantheon of gods. And many values are communicated through stories and tales, some of them very romantic or even erotic. There's definitely a place for sex and eroticism in a number of Far Eastern traditions, but certainly in the Indian one. Shakuntala, the title, is actually a character. It's a lovely young girl who has grown up in a sacred grove. Sacred groves were popular in these plays. The monks were popular. People love to see the monks doing their thing. And what the monks do is they water plants and take care of forests. And in one case, there's a monk, the lead monk, the abbot, the head monk, has a daughter named Shakuntala who he raises among the flowers. And she's compared through all this beautiful poetry, worthy of Shakespeare or anyone else, as she's compared with all these flowers and buds. And at one point, she's seen with her wearing a humble bark dress, and she's saying, you know, "Oh, loosen my bark dress. I seem to be developing past its bounds," and all this stuff. And meanwhile, erotically enough, the king is watching from behind a leaf because he has been hunting here in the sacred grove. And he's come to say hi to the monk, and then he sees this figure of beauty. And he marries her. But then before he can take her back to the palace, he's called away on palace business. So he's like, "I'm going back to the city. You stay here. I'll come back and get you. I promise not to forget you." And all the other girls and the monks are all have this attitude like, "Yeah, no, he's going to forget you." So Kalidasa, our playwright, creates some wonderful scenes. We're going to see our first scene. This is very interesting. It's about Shakuntala and the king's relationship, but it's communicated, as Shakespeare sometimes does, by tertiary characters. A girl named Priyamvada, played by Harry, and a girl named Anasuya, played by Mary Claire, are talking about whether the king's going to forget Shakuntala now that he's heading back to the palace. And then off stage, we never even meet this person, a character worthy of Sleeping Beauty curses the wedding because he hasn't been treated very nicely. So because of this curse, he lays a curse on the future of the love, and then we'll have to see what happens. But that's a horrible voice of this character off stage. Let's go ahead and
I cannot help feeling something uneasy in my mind.
How so?
You know that the pious king was gratefully dismissed by the hermits on the successful termination of their sacrificial rites. He has now returned to the capital, leaving Shakuntala under our care, and it may be doubted whether in the society of his royal consorts he will not forget all that has taken place in the hermitage of ours.
On that score be at ease. Persons of his noble nature are not so destitute of all honorable feeling. I confess, however, that there is one point about which I am rather anxious. What, think you, will Father Canwa say when he hears what has occurred?
In my opinion, he will approve the marriage.
What makes you think so?
From the first, it was always his fixed purpose to bestow his maiden on a husband worthy of her. And since heaven has given her such a husband, his wishes have been realized without any trouble to himself.
We have gathered flowers enough for the sacred offering, dear Anasuya.
Well then, let us now gather more, that we may hear wherewith to propitiate the guardian deity of our dear Shakuntala.
By all means.
Ho there! See you not that I am here?
That must be the voice of the guest announcing his arrival.
Surely, Shakuntala is not absent from the cottage. Her heart, at least, is absent, I fear.
Come along, we have gathered flowers enough.
Woe to thee, maiden, for daring to slight a guest like me! Shall I stand here unwelcomed? Even I, a very mine of penitential merit, worthy of all respect? Shalt thou, rash maid, thus set at naught the ever-sacred rites of hospitality, and fix thy thoughts upon the cherished object of thy love while I am present? Thus I curse thee then. He, even he of whom thou thinkest, he shall think no more of thee, nor in his heart retain thine image. Vainly shalt thou strive to waken his remembrance of the past. He shall disown thee, even as the sot, roused from his midnight drunkenness, denies the words he uttered in his revealings.
Alas, alas, I feel a terrible misfortune has occurred. Shakuntala, from absence of mind, must have offended some guest whom she was bound to respect. Ah, yes, I see, and not less a person than the great sage Deusavius, who is known by most as irascible. It is he who has cursed her, and is now retiring with hasty strides, trembling with passion, and knowing as if nothing could turn him. His wrath is like a consuming fire.
And we're going to look at one more scene from this. The hermits, the monks, bring Shakuntala to the capital and bring her to the king. And it's kind of sad because the curse worked and the king doesn't seem to remember his beautiful bride, even though he immediately recognizes that she's completely gorgeous. All right, so playing Shakuntala, as we know, is Sandy. Ira is the king. James is playing one of the hermits, Sangaraba, who brings her. And Gautami, the other hermit, will be played by Harry. And here we go, our last scene of the day.
I trust the Venerable Kanawa is in good health. The world is interested in his well-being.
Hermit. Holy men have health and prosperity in their own power. He bade us greet your majesty, and after kind inquiries, deliver this message.
Let me hear his commands.
He bade us to say that he feels happy in giving his sanction to the marriage which your majesty contracted with this lady, his daughter, privately and by mutual agreement, because by us thou art esteemed the most illustrious of noble husbands, and Shakuntala, virtue herself in human form revealed, great Brahma, hath in equal yoke united a bride unto a husband worthy of her. Henceforth, that none make blasphemous complaint, that he is pleased with ill-assorted unions, since, therefore, she expects soon to be another, the mother of thy child. Receive her into thy palace, that she may perform in conjunction with thee the ceremonies prescribed by religion on such an occasion.
So please, your majesty, I would add a few words. But why should I not intrude my sentiments when an opportunity of speaking my mind has never been allowed me? She took no counsel with her kindred. Thou didst not confer with thine, but all alone didst solemnize thy nuptials with thy wife. Together, then, hold, converse. Let us leave you.
Ah, how I tremble from my lord's reply.
What strange proposal is this?
His words are like fire to me.
What do I hear, dost thou? Then hesitate, monarch. Thou art well acquainted with the ways of the world, and knowest that a wife, however virtuous and discreet, if she live separate from her wedded lord, though under shelter of her parents' roof, is marked for vile suspicion. Her dwell beside her husband, though he hold her not in his affection, for her kinsman will it.
Do you really mean to assert that I ever married this lady?
Oh, my heart. The worst misgivings are confirmed.
And can I ask you now to move to Shakuntala's circled line on the right column, my revered husband?
My revered husband. But no, I dare not address thee by this title, since thou hast refused to acknowledge our union. Noble descendant of Peru, it is not worthy of thee to betray an innocent-minded girl and disown her in such terms. after having so lately and so solemnly plighted the vows to her in the hermitage.
I will hear no more. Be such a crime far from my thoughts. What evil spirit can possess thee, lady, that thou dost seek to sully my good name by base aspersions like a swollen torrent, that leaping from its narrow bed overthrows the tree upon its bank, and strives to blend its turbid waters with the crystal stream?
If then thou really believest me to be the wife of another, and thy present conduct proceeds from some cloud that obscures thy recollection, I will easily convince thee by this token.
An excellent idea.
She feels for the ring that he gave her.
Alas, alas, woe is me! There is no ring on my finger.
All right. So we have a great, yay! A great soap opera plot unfolding. It's a 5-act play. It's a very elaborate and interesting one. We didn't hear a lot of the really beautiful poetic language that's a part of it too. So these are some of the works that we studied. As I said, we also looked at the Elizabethans a little bit, and we're hoping to continue with that when we start another class, hopefully in the fall. But I wonder if the audience has questions for the performers / students.
I do, actually. What do you guys think about the sisters' portrayal of sex from that Catholic point of view, with pots and pans standing in for, and he's hugging? I mean, it isn't even remotely sexual from a sister's point of view. I thought that was really interesting. What did you guys think about that?
Mary Claire always has comments.
This time, no.
Do you remember studying that scene? Those of you who were here with me? Yes.
I don't think I was here.
I don't think we were here that day.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's obviously it's a striking scene. It's comical, but there may be something darker underneath it. What are your thoughts?
And then covered in soot, no less.
That's
Right.
You think it's irreverent? Is that the point?
No, I think it's interesting to see what a nun thinks about sex.
Interesting to see what a nun thinks about sex.
We spoke a little bit about, we spoke quite a lot actually about gender, because it ends up being a recurring theme in the plays. But I don't hear you speaking now.
Well, there was another woman here, I remember, who commented. You remember that?
Yeah, I do. Commented at some length.
Yeah, I remember that.
About the nun's perspective.
Yeah.
One of the things that we noticed was that that the single women are heroes of this play. The women are actually offered marriage, and they say, no, we'd rather not marry. And then the married woman is basically a villainess who says, good, even though her husband was attempting to assault them sexually, she says, I hope you give those girls what they're, what they deserve. I really hope you torture and kill them for making a fool of you. That's all she can think about. Other comments about that?
I would just like to know, I know this is just a sampling, but which of these plays or others that you read stood out to you the most, or you connected with the most? Was there a certain play, or was there a genre or a time period that you identified with more than others that you liked the most? Anybody?
I really liked the Indian Shakuntala. I love the poetry of it. And like he said, it didn't really touch a lot of the poetry. And we had kind of laughed in the group about it. Does that sound like it's like when the guy leaves, will you ever hear from that guy again? I mean, that's such a recurring thing that we chatted over that. And that, I said, I thought that was true. That was real life. So I enjoyed that one. And although he didn't get to this one, The Merchant of Venice and the little bit of talking that we did about that, I was fascinated by that. So I look forward to getting into Shakespeare.
Right. Anybody else?
Say something.
Do you?
Favorite works from this collection that we did?
Well, I liked that we also had another one, Jew of Malta, and the kind of contrast in that with The Merchant of Venice. It was very interesting, that discussion. And I wasn't familiar with Jew of Malta, but I was familiar with Merchant of Venice. So it's just great, just kind of expanding, your knowledge of these plays that were
Were
far
most
back.
of these unknown to people?
Yeah.
The Jew of Malta is seldom produced because it's so incredibly offensive. And one of the, I'd say one of the threads that we followed is people representing the point of view of other people. Men presenting women, women presenting men in some cases. I agree with you. The Shakuntala story is very identifiable. You start to wonder if a woman wrote that. But I think that Kalidasa, we know Kalidasa was a man.
Oh, I thought it was written by a woman.
No.
You don't know.
No. The only female playwright we read from this period is the only one we have from this period, Sister Rosvita. But I agree with you. Shakuntala feels very identifiable. The woman's perspective is present. And then the Jew of Malta and the Merchant of Venice are related to this topic because neither Marlowe nor Shakespeare were Jewish. Marlowe probably met a few more Jewish people than Shakespeare did. But Shakespeare, of course, famously presents a very human version of this foreign character, the Jew. Yeah, strikingly so. And Marlowe, though he was supposedly more worldly, it's definitely a less worldly vision of a Jew. Just Jew stands in for villain. Other questions?
I think it's just interesting to know. I was very unfamiliar with the older plays, and just to see little sections or watch the time go by, and see that plays were being written for all of time, basically.
And how they tie into what's going on in the world.
Yeah, you can in some cases. In some cases, I wasn't able to make a loop with it, but they do have universal truths, I guess you would say.
Which character did you guys most enjoy reading?
Which character what?
Like when you got a chance to read a character from this series, was there a particular character you enjoyed reading?
I liked reading Noah's wife.
That was funny.
Yeah, I mean, she was so funny, and she just really did not want to get on that ark without her friends. I thought it was really funny, a funny part.
We were debating whether this character was good or bad, I suppose. Noah, of course, is above reproach, but what about his wife, who almost blows the whole enterprise? She is kind of a pain, and she's definitely used for comic effect. It's like a Punch and Judy show when she hits Noah. But on the other hand, for noble reasons, she doesn't want to get on. She doesn't see things in black and white like God apparently does. She says, without my friends, I would never do that. I'd rather stay here and drink with them until we all drown. Pretty interesting to look at that character. Anyone else remember particular characters you enjoyed reading? Did they have to be like you to be enjoyable?
I think it helps. That's why I like the Dostoevsky.
That
You
creep.
did that very well. I think you can tell that you like that character.
Yeah, I think I projected that better.
Well, the bad guy's always more fun to read.
Right.
Sure.
Oh, I think it's fun to portray another part of your personality.
It is definitely a
If you
part of it.
can,
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do it, because it's freeing, I would think.
I agree. James and I just played the young virginal teenage girls. I thought it was our best work.
You did that very well.
What do you think of the experience? Is the experience in any way different performing for this audience, even though it's a friendly one, being turned around? They've been sitting where you have all this time, and I've been projecting out to them.
I think it's a lot different, and I just wanted to say, I have a feeling everyone would agree that thank you so much for being so welcoming and friendly, and made it a lot, easier. But just a different, energy or experience. I would think in the room, sort of like maybe to me an athletic competition where it counts rather than an exhibition or something. And I think you don't know where the laughs, since we hadn't overly rehearsed this, but you don't know maybe where the laughs are until the audience starts really laughing.
That's a good point.
That's very true.
I mean, obviously, when we sit and read, we're all too conscious of the missing factor of standing up, moving around, hitting each other when we're supposed to hit each other, hugging and kissing and all that stuff. And so we didn't get to add that today. But I definitely agree that the audience is another essential element to the theater experience. It's one of the reasons we make you do this in the last class, whether it's exactly what you signed up for or not, because it has this catalyzing effect on your learning, I think.
And I think for some reason, I could understand the play better, which sounds a little odd. You know, as everybody's reading it, it sort of just came back to me and I understood it. So,
I thought you all had a good connection with the audience too, which is something that I think the performance does. But I felt very connected to each of you as you were reading. And you looked up at us and made eye contact, so that was great.
Do you have a theater background, or?
I think all three of us. Yeah, we all do. All three of us work for the Educational Theater Company.
Oh,
No,
okay.
Yeah.
she will.
You all were.
They all work for ETC.
I guess that's another question I have is what made you want to take this class? Did you stumble upon it? Were you a theater goer and lover and you wanted to do more, or your husband? Someone twisted your arm to get here?
We saw it in the magazine and it just, I mean, both of us, Harry and I, love going to plays, but we've never really studied theater. I might have read some in high school, college. And it really has been very interesting. And when we walked in and there were only 5 people here that day, I thought we had to get here early because I figured the whole theater would be open. You know, there'd be so many people. Yeah, but I guess maybe out of the number of people, it doesn't, maybe plays and theater, there's just a smaller little group that really loves it and wants to know about it.
She'd recommended it to me, and from some volunteer work we do with the elderly, some people there had recommended him, and I commented to some. You look back like high school, and because we used to do a play a week, and wish everyone had really made an effort to read it with feeling and not kind of goof around, because it would have, because I mean plays are meant to be read and not just read, but the acting, and some people just have a connection with the audience. I went to the Will on the Hill the other week with the congressman and all, and some news people like Chris Matthews and all, and some people just click right away with the audience, and some are reading it more flatly, not badly, but then other people that just within 2 seconds there's something takes place.
It's fun to watch that.
Yeah.
How about you, James? Your reasons, what drew you to the course?
Well, I'm more into it on live events, like small clubs and theater and stuff. I don't like movies as much. And my friend, I got the friend I mentioned, you happened to be a playwright. And one of the plays we're studying, he selected independently. He wants to produce it by November, so it's really interesting.
Like, coincidentally, we studied Every Man and
but Every Man's too short, so he also needs another play to go with it, because he's...
You should show him the Rosvita play. That's a nice short play with a lot of variety and comedy, actually.
Well, he sent me like... Well, you're right. It's hard to read a play just... Because he sent me like 14 scripts to read it. Unless you read it aloud or have it staged, it's really hard to catch the nuances, the meanings, and the other stuff. And unless it's read out loud and read by all the different characters, I think.
And responded to by an audience, as you said.
I think you need the audience interaction.
And it seems like you read about, I think it's in Maryland, I don't know about DC, definitely New York, where they will do a whole play in one 24-hour cycle, and it just seems it would have to be manic energy to memorize it, because I don't think they're using scripts. Maybe I'm wrong. And I mean, that must be some intense experience. And it seems like the actors, actresses who do it really enjoy it, that a lot of them, some of whom pretty big names, come back and do it again.
Yep.
Well, you mentioned, high school classes, college classes. I mean, obviously this is modeled somewhat on a class, but we're trying to add this performance element. I don't know if you feel like it felt just like one of those high school classes, or if you got some artist's
I
perspective.
used to hate having to read in high school. I mean, it was just like, oh no, this is terrible. But this has really been fun. I mean, it's entirely different. Plus you give so much more information, background information, so it makes it so much more interesting.
The background information helps. I think what you
Oh,
go over
yeah.
all this, the time period and the things involved. Because just reading a play by itself means nothing.
Just make sure you don't fact check any of those things.
You're making them up as you go along.
I mean, of course, I'm not a historian. I'm always bringing an artist's point of
Yeah,
view of this
right.
material, how fun it would be, how you would solve that problem of the arrows or whatever, whatever's happening in the play. I always think about how it would be interpreted by a director or actor. So I'm glad to hear that you now, as for example, you hear about this Maryland project and you think almost from the point of view of the actor, what would that be like to do that in 24 hours? That honestly, I think, is one of the things we're trying to put across to you, is the interpreter's point of view. So it's not for, go ahead.
And also, where we talk about themes, and although not many people said things about their own personal life and how it connected with the play, I found that to be kind of cathartic, to almost like a little session of people talking about things that are important to them. I'm not sure whether that always happens with the process of making a play or not, but
And you have all these obviously eternal themes. It was in the paper, if you saw just the other day, Carole King being honored, and that song, "Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow?" I mean, that's sort of what it is all, or some of what it's about.
You're right, that's Shakuntala all over.
Yeah.
Will you still love me tomorrow?
Yeah. So.
So you're taking things you're reading in class and identifying it in other places.
Sometimes when we have a little more consistency of group, we do actually derive stories, as I may have told you, into devised plays. And actually, if you come next Thursday to Langston Brown at it's from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So I guess around 10:30, we'll share what we devised there, and it combines some of these same plays that you read, some others with some personal stories that people shared. This time I chose not to do that. I thought we'd stick with the excerpts. But we might look at that in the future. The Elizabethans, if we were to do them next, they definitely bring out a lot of themes that are very modern, very personal, endlessly universal. I might jump into the 17th century too. Some amazing things happened after Shakespeare in multiple cultures. We'll see about that. We'll see what flies. But I'm glad you gave me your emails. We can actually ask you what you're most interested in moving into. Other comments about the experience?
Just enjoyed it a lot.
I think you've been an excellent instructor.
he's unbelievable. You all know that if you know him.
Thank you both.
He's so motivating, and he puts it on a level that you can just take it and understand it and flow with it.
And I've gotten
I
comments
admire
like
that so
from people
much.
who are not here today as well, just so you know.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I can't understand either whether it's not a bigger group, because I think I've been trying to talk it up, but I don't know. I think people are maybe too afraid.
They're intimidated.
Yeah.
And I think some people who would be interested, probably this little library is a little bit tricky to get to if you don't, so many of them are main roads, and they may say, well, if I've got a choice, I'll go to the one that's closest to me and easier to get to. I don't know. That's a possibility.
That's interesting feedback. I mean, in the north, in North Arlington at our site, we went from 4 people to, or maybe 5 or 6, but down to 4 for the performance. This time, we've hit a critical mass. We actually have 15 or 20 people involved. So we'll have a performance with like a dozen people.
Well, maybe
Now,
it helps just passing it on to people. Say, this is really good. I think you'd like it. Why don't you come?
I mean, as Sandy knows, we went up from 4 to 5 in our final sharing. We went up from maybe 6 participants to about 10 total this time. So it's baby steps. ETC sticks with programs, as does Parks and Rec. Sticks with programs until they grow into closer to their potential. I wouldn't want much more than 15 or 20,
No.
But it's all about quality. We got the 5 best people with us to the bitter end.
1, 2, 3.
And the best possible audience. That's right. Whether we're outnumbered or not depends on which side you count me on.
You're both. You can flip back and forth.
That's right.
I think the final thing for me was Mary Claire had said the opportunity to play a little girl. So.
That's right.
So one more hand for our actors. Thank you very much for all your kind words and all your insights. It's very helpful, actually, as we form the next program.
I'd appreciate it. Okay. That helps me.
We saw the